Diethylstilbestrol, DES, the drug that became a living nightmare for not only the pregnant women who took it, but their offspring as well. Today, grandmother, daughter, grandson, all paying the price for DES.
This is very important stuff. This is what you could say is the curse of the baby boom generation, because over 1 million people, maybe you, 1 million people on the East Coast alone, have been exposed to DES, diethylstilbestrol, between 1947 and 1965. It was prescribed by lots and lots of doctors to lots of pregnant women to prevent miscarriages. Irene Nold is one of those women. Her doctor had her take DES to prevent a miscarriage while carrying her child, who was to become her daughter. Guess who's here? Her daughter. Catherine Nold Bosler didn't know that her mom had taken the drug, and she herself has had problems with childbirth. First pregnancy resulted in a miscarriage. Second pregnancy, a stillbirth. The child she gave birth to, who you see here this morning, a year ago, Russell, has cerebral palsy. Attorney Steve Scheller says it's all because of DES. He alleges this in a lawsuit that these folks are filing, and if your mom may have taken it, now remember, this is a pretty wide swing from 1947 to 1965, and that basically encompasses what people refer to as the baby boomers. He says if your mom took it and you don't know about it, and it is not just a woman's problem. There are lots of men whose mother took DES who are having genital urinary tract problems, fertility problems, and all of a sudden they're waking up to discover that something that mom was following doctor's orders to do is wreaking havoc in their life. The DES nightmare affects the third generation. We welcome all of you. Mrs. Nold, when did you tell your daughter you took DES?
Well, I'm not quite sure when I told her, but it was really after she was married.
When did you know?
Well, I'd had a difficult time becoming pregnant. I was married 9 years before I became pregnant. And in order to prevent a miscarriage, my doctor prescribed DES and bed rest. At that time, I just felt that I would do anything to have this baby.
That time is 1957?
1955.
55, okay.
55. So I followed the orders. I spent 1 full month in bed and then had a perfectly normal pregnancy afterwards, the whole time taking DES up until she was born.
When she was married, so in other words, prior to her marriage, you didn't tell her anything? You didn't want to worry her, or you didn't know?
Well, I didn't know. You know, I think that the first indication that this drug had been prescribed became public somewhere around 1970. And that's when she would have been, what, 15?
Mm-hmm.
But there were just things in the newspaper, you know.
When you saw those things in the newspaper, though, it's real important to understand. Did you know you took it, or did you have a suspicion you took it, or were you sure?
You know, that is one of those things that you think, well, I took this medicine, but everything's fine. You know, my doctor wouldn't give me something that was harmful.
My doctor would not do anything to harm me. And okay, let's not beat up on your doctor too much, because probably your doctor didn't know.
Oh, I'm sure he didn't.
That he was doing something wrong,
oh,
obviously.
no, he just told me, he said, take this medicine, don't worry, you're going to be just fine.
Okay, Catherine, your turn. How did your mother tell you she took DES, and what was your reaction?
Well, back when I first got married and I was thinking about becoming pregnant, my OB/GYN said, well, you were born at a time when people were prescribing DES. Mm-hmm. And my mother had mentioned it to me back in, you know, in the early 70s, but we didn't really discuss it, you know. So when I decided to become pregnant, my doctor wanted me to check it out. And so I talked to my mom and I said, did you take DES? And she said, yes, I did.
And what was your reaction?
Nothing really, you know. I've always been a real healthy person, and I didn't think I would ever have any problems with my pregnancy.
When the first pregnancy wound up in a miscarriage?
Yes.
After the miscarriage, did you go back to the doctor and ask him to examine you to see if there was any damage?
Well, he had examined me before that. He gave me 2 tests, and he did find out that, yes, there was definitely extensive DES exposure.
But you went ahead with the pregnancy again?
Yeah, you know, I didn't think anything could go wrong. I have hardly ever had a cold in my life. You know, I just didn't think anything could go wrong.
Okay, so there was the miscarriage, then there was the stillbirth.
Yeah.
And is it your feeling that Russell has cerebral palsy because of DES?
Oh, yes. Well, he has cerebral palsy as a result of being premature, and he was premature as a result of my DES exposure.
Okay. We're hoping Russell can hang in there till 10:30. We know that a lot of you are moms and dads and understand it if you can't. We'll take a 2-minute pit stop and try to see what we can do for him while you watch this. We'll come back. This is serious stuff. You'll meet an attorney in a minute who will tell both women and men how the long-lasting effects of DES are still very much a reality these days. Don't go away. Okay, DES, grandmother, mother, child. That's what we're talking about this morning in Philadelphia. Hi, you're on the air. Go ahead. Go ahead, please. You're on the air.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Okay, let's try this line. Hi, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Wally.
Good morning.
The same situation happened to me. I'm one of the younger DES daughters. I'm 25 years old, and I had a premature baby who was 7 weeks early and result had apnea, and he was on a heart monitor, all because of my incompetent cervix, which was caused by my mother taking the drug.
When did you find out you had it?
After I was pregnant.
Really?
It wasn't DES. And then when I was pregnant, I had a wonderful doctor, and he diagnosed me.
So how is the baby now?
He's finally caught up. They said he would be a little slower. But the ironic thing was I had to take a lot of drugs to keep the pregnancy. And a lot of the drugs might have had a side effect, so you never really know.
Okay. We need to say something. Squib Pharmaceuticals, manufacturer of DES, has no comment on DES cases. However, attorney Steve Scheller does. He's represented over 60 different people in cases like these, and among his clients are the other 2 people who are sitting here, plus Russell. You would say to this woman and to other women and men, and I want to get into the men thing here for a second because people think it's exclusively a woman's problem. It's not. You would say to this woman what? Take a chance and have another child, or?
Well, I think you've got a good doctor, and the important thing is to be aware that you have the condition of changes, physical changes that create the ability to have premature children, and also an inability to maintain a pregnancy to term.
If you think your mother took DES, is a simple pelvic exam or the simple gynecological exam that women take, is that enough to get?
Only by an experienced doctor who is familiar with dealing with DES daughters.
How do you know who is and who isn't?
Well, the only way you can do that is you're probably going to have to ask your own physician to refer you to somebody, perhaps at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital in this area or at Pennsylvania Hospital, where they actually have physicians who are highly experienced in dealing with DES daughters. The real critical problem is the devastating effects that we see. If you don't maintain your pregnancy to term, you can have a baby prematurely, and you can have the kinds of problems that Russell has. And it's very difficult to have to stay in bed, to have to go through the really difficult treatments that are necessary. One of the biggest problems we have is to have the moms, the mothers, really tell their daughters, gee, I did take something. I think you got to watch out. And when we have such a significant number of people exposed, it's very, very critical that they tell their daughters, I may have taken this product, I think I did, let me see what we can do about it.
Okay. How were you when your mom told you?
Well, I was already pregnant, and the doctor just right away, I took steroids for my pregnancy, I took a lot of drugs to keep the pregnancy, so the steroids put a lot of weight on him and helped his lungs develop. So thank God for being 7 weeks early.
Got one more question for you. Will you have another child?
I don't know. They say that they can put a stitch in, but I don't really want to risk that for the child.
Okay.
It would be selfish on the part of, you know, having a child that, you know, I could lose it, or it's a hard call.
We wish you well. Thank you for sharing that. Hi, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Well, I'd just like to say thanks, first of all, for bringing this to people's attention.
Oh, it's important. It's very important information. It really is.
I'm 35 years old. I've had 6 pregnancies. Only 3 I kept to term. The last child I had, since she's been about 2, and now she's 4 1/2, she's had 5 bouts of cystitis. And when I was a child, pregnancy until I had children, I had cystitis, and my oldest son has had 2 undescending testes operations, and he's still not quite right. And my brother, who's the oldest of my parents' children, had undescending testes operations, and he's been unable to have children.
Help us with this. So you're kind of typifying what we were talking about before. Problems that show up in boys would be what?
Yeah, exactly what this young
undescended testicles?
Yes, that's one of the things. The many changes in the testicular tract, and the men don't like to talk about it or mention it. That's one of the most difficult problems. The women are much more carefully followed and monitored. We've had DES clinics in the United States for the last 10 years monitoring women. Men have had almost no monitoring at all. Men can get testicular cancer and have a number of other problems. And this woman's...
As children or as adults?
As adults. Okay. And we're even beginning to suspect changes now that could be even chromosomal, created by the DES exposure.
We're glad you called, and we're glad that obviously things have not been easy for you either. Thank you for sharing that with us. Stay with us as AM Philadelphia continues. What can you do if you are a DES daughter or son and you want to have children anyway? And what if you're that mother who has not yet told your daughter about your taking DES? Stay with us. Welcome back to AM Philadelphia. Important point. Drugs have different effects in different people. How do you know it's not just a tragic accident, that these people did the best they could with the knowledge they had at the time?
Well, we knew in DES that it doesn't work, and it was known very early on that it didn't work, yet the drug companies continued to sell it. In fact, today it's the morning after pill, so not only did it not work, but it creates the exact opposite effect.
So they now give DES to women so that they will have a miscarriage?
Yes. In fact, it's very sad. You talk about the old circus wagons from the 1800s selling hair grower and various elixirs to cure you. The other thing is the unsafe effects. They knew back in 1939 in an in-house study on animals that it creates the same kind of effects in animals that it does in women in utero back in the 50s and 60s, which creates the problems we now see today. And yet that information had never been given to the FDA, which was a young organization at the time in the 40s when this was originally approved. In fact, the drug companies had the opportunity again in 1961 to prove that it was effective, and they chose not to, and that's why it went off the market basically in the 60s.
Okay. You should know that Russell is in the capable arms of Elizabeth Starr at this very moment. He's got a little bit fussy. Does every single daughter and son, DES daughter and son, have a cause of action?
Yes, those who have injuries. Obviously, some people haven't had an injury in the sense they haven't had any children, or they haven't had any cancer, which it does cause also. So yes, they do have a cause of action.
Okay, boy, the time has gone fast in this one. Where are you at now in terms of your life's been turned upside down? All because a mother did something the doctor told her to do. You didn't do anything bad here. You did exactly what the doctor told you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where are you with this?
Well, you know, it's very upsetting. I mean, every day there's something new that comes up about
Do you want
CP.
more children?
I don't think I can have more children. They don't think that I have any hope of carrying a child to term. I was on bed rest for my entire pregnancy. I had a cerclage, I had all the top medical technology, and I couldn't carry my pregnancy past 26 weeks.
We're glad you came here to talk about this. Suffice to say that there is a group called DES Action. It's a national group. We have a local number if you call us in the AM Philadelphia office. But to our guest this morning, mother and daughter who've had to bear this cross, and the child, Russell, who's got cerebral palsy, they allege because of this, and also attorney Steve Scheller, we thank you very much. Stay with us as AM Philadelphia continues. Don't go away.